Was convicted of the capital murder and sentenced to death for the December 2008 murder of his girlfriend's 13-month-old daughter.
Last minute.
The case of Blaine Milam and the death of Amora Carson has left a lasting impact on those involved. For Amora's family, the pain of losing a young child remains ever present. While the legal proceedings and Milam's execution provided some measure of closure, nothing could bring back the innocence of a life taken too soon. This case also served as a critical moment for the legal system. It raised important questions about justice, accountability, and how mental health and intellectual disabilities should be considered in serious criminal cases. The balance between justice for the victim and mercy for the accused is a debate that continues to resonate. The lasting effect on the community cannot be understated. For those who knew Amora, the pain of her loss lingers in ways that a trial or execution cannot undo. Milam's conviction and the subsequent sentence highlighted the need for accountability, but the community still feels the weight of the tragedy. Ultimately, the story of Amora Carson and Blaine Milam is a reminder of how violence can forever alter lives. While the legal system has done its part, the emotional scars left by this case will endure for those affected, serving as a constant reminder of the complexities surrounding justice and the search for closure. As the police pieced together the truth, it became clear that what had started as a tragedy quickly turned into a case of deliberate and brutal harm. This documentary will examine what transpired behind the closed doors of that trailer, the investigation that followed, and the shocking reality that emerged from the depths of what was once thought to be a simple accident. Through careful analysis, we'll uncover the facts that led to Blaine Milam's conviction and how the case brought justice to a family, though no outcome could undo the devastating loss they endured. This is the untold story of how a community and a family were forever changed by a tragedy that no one could have predicted. If you've made it this far, you've likely felt the weight of this story, just like we have. But the truth is, stories like this deserve to be heard, and justice must always be remembered. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to stay updated on more true crime stories that demand our attention. And if you choose not to subscribe, we understand, but we'd really appreciate it if you could let us know why in the comments below. Your feedback matters. Also, let us know where you're watching from, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Your voice matters here.
Amora Blaine Carson was born in 2007 and was just 13 months old when her life was tragically cut short. As a young child, she was full of energy, curiosity, and innocence, qualities that family members and friends would later reflect on with sorrow. Amora lived in a trailer in Rusk County, East Texas, with her mother, Jessica Carson, and her mother's boyfriend, Blaine Keith Milam. Jessica Carson, like many young mothers, had her struggles. At just 18 years old, she was raising a child while involved in a relationship with Blaine Milam, a man whose past was already marked with trouble. Milam was no stranger to law enforcement. Born in Gregg County, Texas, on December 12, 1989, he had already established a criminal record by the time he crossed paths with Jessica. Milam was a registered sex offender, and his history included violent tendencies, which friends and family had noticed over time. Their relationship quickly became fraught with tension. Milam's struggles with substance abuse, particularly methamphetamines, only fueled the volatility of the situation. Jessica, though aware of Milam's issues, continued the relationship, perhaps driven by a desire for stability or simply unable to see a way out. As their relationship deepened, so too did the dysfunction in their household. Despite the turmoil, Amora's life should have been filled with the normal joys of childhood, but the environment around her was anything but. Those close to Jessica and Milam later revealed that Milam had begun to show signs of mental instability. He had started to believe that Amora was somehow possessed by a demon, an idea that would drive him to increasingly erratic behavior. He later claimed that Amora's behavior had become unexplainable, which led him to entertain the disturbing notion that she was under the influence of supernatural forces.
As tensions grew in the household, Jessica's role in the relationship became increasingly complicated. She was caught between the love for her daughter and her attachment to Milam, despite his growing instability. The days leading up to the tragic events on December 2, 2008, were filled with arguments and increasing signs of dysfunction. However, no one could predict the devastating turn the situation would take. By this time, Milam's grip on reality had loosened. He and Jessica had concocted an explanation for Amora's condition that no one could have anticipated. This notion that Amora was somehow possessed would become a central part of Milam's twisted narrative when investigators later began to question him. As investigators delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Amora's death, it became clear that Jessica and Milam were not just involved in a tragic accident, but rather entangled in a series of decisions and events that had led to something far darker. Jessica's conflicting statements, combined with Milam's erratic behavior, would create a complex narrative for law enforcement to untangle. Their backgrounds, both scarred by personal struggles and difficult pasts, would be essential pieces in understanding what had happened behind the closed doors of their trailer. Amora's brief life, filled with so much potential, was tragically ended by a series of decisions made in an environment shaped by instability and violence. The events leading to her death would soon be laid bare for all to see, leaving a community shocked and searching for answers in the wake of such a senseless loss.
In the days leading up to December 2, 2008, tensions inside the trailer where Blaine Milam and Jessica Carson lived with her 13-month-old daughter, Amora, were escalating. The relationship between Milam and Carson was already marked by instability. Milam, just 18 years old, struggled with substance abuse, particularly methamphetamine, and his temper was unpredictable. These factors created a constant undercurrent of tension in their home. Jessica Carson, also 18, found herself caught in a toxic relationship. Despite the dysfunction, she stayed with Milam, perhaps unsure how to escape. Her role as a mother weighed heavily on her, but she was torn between her desire to protect Amora and her attachment to Milam. This emotional conflict only deepened the strain within the household. Milam's mental state began to deteriorate in the days leading up to the crime. He became obsessed with the idea that Amora was possessed by a demon. Though there was no clear reason for this belief, Milam's growing paranoia took hold. He began to view Amora's normal behavior as abnormal, fueling his increasing erratic behavior. The belief that something supernatural was influencing the child added another layer of tension to an already volatile environment. By December 1, 2008, the tension between Milam and Carson reached its peak. Milam's increasingly unpredictable behavior made the atmosphere in the trailer tense and uncomfortable. Jessica, concerned about Amora's safety, was unable to break free from the situation. The couple's conflicting stories about what had happened to Amora only further complicated the situation.
As December 2 approached, there were no outward signs that things would take such a tragic turn. Yet that day, Milam would make a call to 911 that would initiate an investigation into the death of his girlfriend's 13-month-old daughter. The unstable environment in the trailer had already set the stage for the events that would unfold, but no one could have predicted the devastating outcome. On the morning of December 2, 2008, Blaine Milam made a call to 911 that would ignite an investigation into one of the most tragic events in East Texas. At 10:37 a.m., Milam's voice trembled as he reported, "I just found her dead." The dispatcher quickly asked, "How old is your daughter?" To which Milam replied, 13 months old. As the call continued, Milam explained that he had found Amora Carson, his girlfriend's daughter, unresponsive in her crib.
The dispatcher then connected him with the ambulance service, but there was something unsettling in Milam's voice, a hesitation, a sense of uncertainty, as if the situation wasn't as clear as it seemed. When emergency responders arrived, they were met with conflicting stories from Milam and Jessica Carson, who was also present. Initially, they claimed that Amora had been injured while they were away. However, the explanation soon began to unravel as investigators noticed inconsistencies in their statements. The situation began to shift from what appeared to be a simple accident to something more complicated.
As the authorities examined the scene, they became increasingly suspicious of the timeline and the details provided by Milam and Carson. While the paramedics on site could not immediately explain Amora's condition, the inconsistencies in the couple's account raised more questions. What was initially described as an unfortunate accident was starting to look like something much more deliberate. In the hours that followed, Milam and Carson would offer different explanations for what had happened, further complicating the investigation. It was clear that the truth behind Amora's death was far from simple, and the investigation was just beginning to reveal the unsettling complexity of the case. What had begun as a routine emergency call would soon uncover a much darker story, one that would demand answers and leave everyone searching for the truth. As the investigation into Amora Carson's death progressed, the evidence started to shift the case from a potential accident to something far more troubling. Key forensic findings played a crucial role in uncovering the truth, revealing a story of deeper complexity. One of the first significant pieces of evidence was discovered within the trailer. Investigators found bloodstains scattered across multiple surfaces. These stains, not isolated to one location, immediately raised concerns. They suggested that Amora's injuries were much more severe than originally reported. DNA testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Amora, which made it clear that the situation was far from an accident.
Another critical discovery came when investigators found a pipe key hidden beneath the trailer, lodged in the floorboards. Forensic experts noted traces of lubricant on the key, which matched a substance found in other parts of the home. This pointed to the possibility that evidence had been intentionally concealed, a finding that deepened the suspicion around the case. The autopsy conducted on Amora provided more insight into her cause of death. While the exact cause could not be immediately determined, the pathologist's report revealed multiple signs of injury, which suggested prolonged trauma. These injuries were inconsistent with the explanation of a simple fall or accidental injury. Though the medical examiner exercised caution in drawing conclusions, the evidence spoke volumes. Amora's body showed signs of blunt force trauma, and the circumstances indicated that these injuries were inflicted over a period of time, not as a result of a single event. As the authorities sifted through the evidence, they were faced with multiple conflicting statements from Milam and Carson, further complicating the case. With each new piece of physical evidence, the investigation became clearer. What began as an emergency call had now escalated into a much darker and more complex situation. The investigation would continue to unfold, with each revelation drawing them closer to the truth behind Amora's tragic death. Blaine Milam's trial began in June 2010 in Montgomery County, Texas. The prosecution methodically presented its case, emphasizing the evidence that suggested Milam's role in Amora Carson's death was intentional. They focused on the bloodstains found throughout the trailer, the hidden pipe key, and the contradictions in the statements from both Milam and Jessica Carson. Their argument was simple. The physical evidence, along with their conflicting stories, pointed to deliberate actions that led to the child's death.
The defense, however, countered with a different narrative. Milam's attorneys argued that he should not be held fully accountable for his actions due to his intellectual disability. They highlighted Milam's background, his limited formal education, mental health struggles, and troubled history, as factors that could have influenced his decision-making. They suggested that these issues contributed to his inability to fully understand the consequences of his actions. Despite this defense, the prosecution pushed for the capital murder charge, arguing that the evidence overwhelmingly pointed to Milam's guilt. The jury was asked to consider whether Milam's intellectual disability was enough to explain his actions, or whether the evidence suggested that he had acted with intent and awareness. After deliberating, the jury returned with a verdict of guilty of capital murder. Milam was sentenced to death, a sentence that reflected the severity of the crime and the weight of the evidence against him. The verdict marked a significant moment in the case, bringing some measure of closure to a grieving community. Jessica Carson, Milam's girlfriend and the mother of the victim, was also charged. Though she was not convicted of capital murder, she was found guilty of injury to a child due to her involvement in Amora's suffering. Carson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a sentence that reflected her role in the tragedy. The trial revealed the complexity of the case, as the courtroom became a battleground for two very different interpretations of what led to Amora's tragic death. The legal proceedings ultimately held both Milam and Carson accountable, but the scars from this devastating event would remain long after the trial ended.
On September 25, 2025, Blaine Milam's death sentence was carried out by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. This marked the conclusion of a case that had shocked the state and captivated the public for over a decade. Milam, convicted of capital murder in 2010, had been on death row for years, enduring multiple delays to his execution. However, that day, the lengthy legal battle finally reached its end. Milam's final meal was a simple request: cheeseburgers, fries, and sweet tea. It reflected a man in his final moments, not seeking indulgence, but a sense of quiet reflection. As the time of his execution approached, Milam was given the opportunity to speak. In a calm and measured tone, he said, "If any of you would like to see me again, I implore you, no matter who you are, to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and we will meet again. I love you all. Take me home, Jesus." At 6:45 p.m., the lethal injection was administered. Milam's life came to an end in accordance with the state's legal system. For many, it was viewed as a necessary consequence of the crime he committed. For others, his execution raised deeper questions about the fairness of the justice system and the moral implications of the death penalty. The public's response was mixed. Some felt that justice had been served, while others questioned whether the severity of the punishment was truly warranted. Milam's final words, focused on faith and redemption, stood in stark contrast to the violent crime that had led to his conviction.
Milam became the 5th person in Texas to die of execution this year and the 1st from Rusk County.
For the family of Amora Carson, the execution brought a sense of closure, though no punishment could bring back the young child they lost. It was a somber moment, a reminder of the lasting effects of a tragedy that affected not only the victim's family, but also the entire community. The case of Blaine Milam continues to serve as a reflection on the complexities of justice, punishment, and the consequences of violence. It remains a story that challenges our understanding of redemption and the lasting impact of a single life lost. The case of Blaine Milam and the death of Amora Carson has left a lasting imprint on those who followed it. For Amora's family, the pain of losing a young child is immeasurable. While the execution of Milam provided some sense of justice, it could never undo the trauma or bring back their daughter. The legal proceedings highlighted difficult questions surrounding justice and punishment, especially in cases involving mental health and intellectual disabilities. The aftermath of this case has sparked ongoing debates about accountability, fairness, and mercy. For the community, the effects are still felt. The loss of Amora has left a void that no verdict or sentence can fill. As Milam's life ended and the case closed, the emotional scars linger. What does justice truly mean when it can never erase the pain of a lost life? Thank you for watching this story to the end. We know it's a tough one, but we appreciate your time and attention. If you haven't yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story. Your support means a lot, and it helps us keep bringing you more true crime documentaries that dig into the heart of these important cases. Stay tuned for more, and take care.